From the Nigerian Nightmare getting sent to purgatory with that head kick, to Rocky establishing himself firmly at the top of the division. This is why another Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards rematch should not happen. The way that Rocky knocked Usman out left little doubt as to who should be champion. I mean, it's hard to recover from any kind of KO, but the one at UFC 278 was just too special. Usman was unconscious on the floor until the medical professionals came in to bring him back to life. Even afterward, the former champ admitted he really didn't know what had happened for a few hours, and just remembered waking up in the hospital. People might argue that Kamaru was winning that fight for 4 straight rounds before that happened, but guys, that happened. I admit, Edwards had to pull every ounce of will he had left to walk in for that final round. The fight was all but over because Rocky couldn't do much about Usman's wrestling, and even the judges had the former champ winning. All he had to do was absolutely nothing for a few more seconds, and he would have defended his title successfully yet again. The Rocky walked into the final round already beaten. He'd done all he could, but Kamaru had an answer to everything. Then he saw an opening. Usman was dropping his head a little too low to duck his punches, and realizing that, Edwards threw a head kick that connected. The nightmare was over, and Kamaru was unconscious before he even hit the floor, but he'd been so dominant in the match that the UFC decided it'd be a good idea to run it back again. So Usman got his wish to reclaim the title he held for so long. But to do that, he had to walk into the Lion's Den and face Leon in his own backyard at UFC 286. Given how impressive the Nigerian was in the last match until the end, the bookmakers, pundits, and analysts all pegged him to shorten Rocky's reign, but that just wasn't the case. The body language of the fighters was the exact opposite of what it previously was. Edwards walked a little taller and he looked a lot more confident in the octagon. Kamaru, on the other hand, didn't seem anything like the champion he once was. It was clear that he was still shaken up with what happened last time and wasn't committing to anything in the octagon. I mean, yeah, sure there were some half-hearted takedown attempts, but they didn't result in much. Usman was too aware of Leon's kicks. He just didn't want to risk going to sleep again. So after a pretty one-sided affair, Edwards went on to retain his title by a majority decision. A lot of the fans were disappointed by seeing how Usman performed, because he's always been a very dominant fighter. I'm sure some of you remember the first time they met. They were both much younger, and it was Usman's first match in the UFC. Back then, no one thought these guys would become champions one after the other, especially Edwards because of how badly Kamaru beat him up. The fight wasn't even a contest, as the Nightmare kept doing whatever he wanted, and all Rocky could do was hold on for dear life. The match went the distance, but everyone knew who the victor was. Just like that, on December 2015 in Florida, Usman's reign of terror in the UFC began, and Edwards vowed never to lose again. So when Rocky came knocking at Kamaru's door in August 2022, it was expected to go down the same way their original fight did. And that's exactly what was happening before Edwards dropped the former champ. Their record now stands at 2-1 in Leon's favor, but Usman doesn't want to give up chasing the title. He knows that Dana can't just give him unlimited fights with Rocky until he wins, so he needs to prove himself again. Kamaru's still the #1 contender in the division because he's beaten everyone up in the past. He defeated Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal twice, has taken on Gilbert Burns, and snatched that strap from Tyron Woodley. But that record will have to be tested once again, because he's been taken down by Leon twice too. Dana can't just hold up the division, so he decided to give the next title fight to Colby. That'd mean that Kamaru would have to go through some of those younger guys, which will become more difficult for him to do with each passing day. Khamzat Chimaev, Shavkat Rakhmonov, and Bilal Muhammad are all hungry for the crown, and Usman simply doesn't have it in him to win against them. Tell me honestly, guys, would you really want to see a fourth match between Leon and Kamaru? I know I won't. What will it achieve? Rocky has already proven himself more than deserving of the title, so the UFC won't force Usman to try and take him off again. And imagine what'll happen if the Nightmare manages to win the next time. You can't expect Dana to run it back for a 5th time. No one would watch it. Simple as that. There's no point in making a whole division stale by forcing the same fight over and over again. Edwards has demonstrated now that he can deal with Usman's pressure and has the tools to counteract his wrestling. Rarely do we see a striker come out on top against a grappler, but Rocky's shown the fans just how much it's possible. As a champion, he does have some say in who he wants to fight, and has categorically said that the Kamaru chapter in his life is now closed forever. It's not like Edwards doesn't have anyone else to fight in the division. There's a whole line of contenders he must satisfy. I already told you guys how Dana wants Colby to be the next guy that Rocky has to fight, cause if there was no Usman in the division, then Chaos would have been the champion. After that, Bilal's already been waiting for a long time. I know most fans don't really like him, but he's proven himself time and time again. He showed up on short notice to fight Burns at UFC 288 and looked lethal. Once that's done, Khamzat would want his shot too. The man's one of the most electrifying fighters that Dana's got on his hands, and he wants to put him in a title fight. Whether it be at welterweight or middleweight, that's yet to be seen. Right on his heels is Shavkat, who's been gaining a lot of momentum lately along with tons of new fans. Any one of these guys can be the next champion, and as I mentioned, they're still pretty young and are likely to have much longer reigns than Usman. The former champ knows this. That's why he has been calling out the Boers. For the Nightmare, there's only one way to convince Dana he's the best man to dethrone Edwards, and that's by defeating the most exciting fighter the promotion has to offer. Kamaru's been calling out Khamzat for a battle. Even though Dana wanted the Chechen to fight at middleweight, Usman was up for a catchweight bout at max. The UFC boss denied that request and told him to move up to 185 if he wants to take on Chimaev. Now, Kamaru won't ever do that, because that'll mean stepping on the toes of his friend Israel Adesanya. Dana can be convinced to allow it to happen, but only if Khamzat can successfully drop down to 170. This is a more exciting match than any fight Usman will ever have with Leon. The fans are calling for it, and the fighters are ready to throw it down. A win here would guarantee Khamzat a shot at Rocky's crown, and for Usman, it'd be a chance to prove to the world that he's still got it. On the other side, Leon's unconcerned with whatever happens to the Nightmare because he's firmly on top now. Before UFC 286, there were doubts about Edwards even deserving the welterweight title, but an almost flawless performance against the former champ silenced all his haters. He's starting to behave like a champion too now. When Dana told him Colby is supposed to be next, Rocky stood his ground and said that Chaos almost sat out for an entire year and doesn't have anything to show for his case. Dana obviously doesn't care and is still gonna push Colby for the crown, but the thing is that the fight hasn't been booked, and it's not even gonna happen until Leon agrees to it. The problem Covington has right now is Bilal, because the man's been very active in the division and has gained a lot of love from Dana for taking a short-notice fight against Burns. In any case, rest easy, guys. We're not gonna have a fourth fight. So, from Rocky establishing himself firmly at the top of the division to the Nigerian Nightmare getting sent to purgatory with that head kick. This was why another Kamaru Usman versus Leon Edwards rematch shouldn't happen.